So, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Paolo Gentiloni, the European Commissioner for the Economy. We are delighted to welcome him here today. Signor Gentiloni, thank you very much. Buongiorno. Piacere. Ladies and gentlemen, will you join me in greeting Commissioner Gentiloni very warmly indeed? Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I know that we have here gathered a lot of important members of the European business community. And I think, well, I had prepared a speech on our priorities that I will very briefly deliver, but surely also adding some remarks on the actuality and also the new challenges that we have. In fact, we face a combination of short-term and longer-term challenges which are already knocking on our door. The transition to a healthy planet, and I understand that it was the subject of the panel just finished, harnessing a new digital world and reconciling the social and the market when modernizing our economy. And we are doing this in a new and different scenario because of the outbreak of coronavirus. So the defining challenge for the new Commission is the challenge to keep our planet and people healthy. I think this was defining the role, the global role of the new European Commission, and also a potential leadership of the European institutions in this challenge, which is very important and also very difficult to achieve. The European Green Deal is the roadmap not only to achieve climate neutrality by 2050, but it is also a tremendous economic opportunity for Europe. And among the tools to implement the Green Deal, let me mention briefly taxation, a powerful tool in changing consumers' and producer behavior. Using taxation, we will help reduce carbon emissions and promote more sustainable choices. Yet at the moment, Europe's framework for taxation is far from green. In fact, some of the most polluting fuels are taxed at the least. For that reason, one of my priorities is to revise the Energy Tax Directive and bring it in line with our climate ambition. We must look at the implicit subsidies for fossil fuels, which are entirely out of sync with our green agenda. In parallel, we will have to ensure that European efforts are not undermined by carbon leakage. The Commission will explore ways to introduce a carbon border adjustment mechanism to address this risk. Just yesterday, we launched the Inception impact assessments on these two files, the Energy Taxation Directive and the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, on which these two files we intend to come forward with our proposals next year. You could think that this is a too long time, but I'm sure that you know that both these issues, and particularly the carbon border mechanism adjustment mechanism, is very complex, and this assessment of impact is not only something that the Commission normally is doing, but in this case, more than in other, is extremely necessary to define the mechanism. So the green transition will entail decarbonization of our energy systems, mobilizing industry for the circular economy, renovation of buildings, changes in our food attitudes, and shifting to sustainable and smart mobility. The investment needs are enormous and will require an ambitious mobilization of both private and public finances. The European Green Deal investment plan, which I presented in January, will mobilize at least 1 trillion of sustainable investments over the next decade, but we have to work to further facilitate public investment to give this plan even more strength. Second priority, Europe should face up to its productivity challenge while ensuring inclusive growth. New technologies and disruptive innovation are critical to achieve the objectives of the European Green Deal. At the same time, while upgrading our economy to be more environmentally sustainable, we must address Europe's long-standing productivity challenge and preserve the cohesion of Europe's social market economy. The prospect of low growth persisting in the medium and longer term is a real one, against the background of low productivity and aging population and increasing inequalities. This requires reforms to invest in tangible and intangible capital to increase productivity. The European Union has all the assets to make the most of the digital transition. We must move first on the future technologies with the most potential, while ensuring the European approach is human, ethical, and values-based. Such investments to facilitate the transformation towards an environmentally sustainable and digital economy should be coupled with investment in education and skills. This is at the heart of how Europe's social market economy reconciles the market and the social. We will need to support job transitions to ensure that citizens are supported in adapting to changing labor market needs, particularly in the sectors and regions lagging behind. Third, we must progress in putting in place a future-proof economic governance for the EU. We have, as you know, recently launched a review of our economic fiscal surveillance framework, which I hope will pave the way for simpler EU fiscal rules, less pro-cyclical policies, and a greater capacity to facilitate investment. Simpler, less pro-cyclical, more capable to facilitate investment, especially investment in our main future challenges. We are now in a phase of public consultation and debate with all interested stakeholders, and I'm sure that you will give a contribution to this debate. And we intend to draw conclusions from this debate in the second half of the year. Of course, completing our economic and monetary union requires more than this review. For the euro area to become the engine of prosperity and stability for the whole union, we will need to go further than what has been agreed so far. Banking union is necessary to address the remaining pockets of instability and the fragmentation of banking and capital markets. These are still a key obstacle to investment. If we want to provide citizens, businesses, and society with adequate tools to turn changes into opportunities, we also need to complete the capital markets union. More than anything, economic governance signifies the willingness and ability to coordinate our policies. Europe has for some time lived with unusual macroeconomic conditions. A low growth and inflation rate, environment constraints monetary policy, to one of low, indeed very low, interest rates. Yet our rules are not adapted to the current macroeconomic environment. The EU fiscal policy framework cannot prescribe the use of fiscal space in member states that have it. Nor do we have a fiscal stabilization tool to deploy at the level of the euro area. But we can and should coordinate our policy responses in the face of large uncertainty. This is essential, not least since monetary policy and automatic stabilizers will likely not be enough to stabilize the economy should more severe downside risks materialize. And are they materializing? This is the question that the Ciao, Nicolas. This is the question that the coronavirus outbreak is posing to us. The developments with regard to this outbreak are a clear reminder of the need to coordinate our actions. This week, both the Eurogroup and the G7 finance ministers have exchanged views on the economic repercussions of the coronavirus in our member states and beyond. Personally, I had the opportunity to participate in these last 2 weeks to a G20 in Riyadh and to 3 conference calls, the G7, the Eurogroup, and the IMF. It is sad to recognize the fact that this outbreak has had a good consequence on rediscovering the importance of multilateralism to face global challenges, because this is the fact. G7 and Eurogroup are delivered more or less a very similar communique, pledging and taking commitments very similar, and I assure you in a very cooperative way. So to solve global problems, we need global multilateralism. So the consequences, the good news is that the rate of new cases in China appears to be declining, but it has also become clear that the short-term impact on the Chinese economy is likely to be significant. Moreover, spillovers outside China have been increased materially in the last 2 weeks, with the highest numbers notably so far in South Korea, Iran, and of course Italy. These developments drove the large drop and the volatility in equities markets we have seen. So in a nutshell, we are seeing a materialization of the downside risks that I pointed out in the Commission's winter forecast 3 weeks ago, but at the time not affecting our economic forecast. The G7 has committed to use all appropriate policy tools to achieve strong, sustainable growth and safeguard against downside risks. On the Commission side, we will analyze all incoming data to have the best possible sense of the emerging impact of the virus on the European economy. We will work very closely together with our member states and our international partners on that, with the aim of being at the forefront of events. Economic policy tools need to be deployed at the right time, not too early, but certainly not too late. The Eurogroup will meet again on March 16th and will discuss policy options to face this crisis, both within Europe and globally. I want to recall that our fiscal rules incorporate flexibilities that allow for changing economic and budgetary conditions to be taken into account already in our rules. This includes, for example, the provision allowing governments to respond to unusual events. But broader action, including fiscal measures, will be needed to face the necessities of our healthcare systems to guarantee liquidity, especially for small and medium enterprises, to avoid serious losses of jobs in the affected sectors. We all know where the most affected sectors are. Ladies and gentlemen, so Europe needs to raise its game, and I hope I have expressed what we are determined to do by simultaneously facing the challenges and embracing the opportunities that come with the green and digital transitions, by building an economy that is both productive and inclusive, and by modernizing our economic governance and closely coordinate our response to economic challenges. The most urgent and pressing one of today, facing consequences of the coronavirus, should be a wake-up call for the coordination of our fiscal policies to reassure and protect our enterprises, our workers, and all European citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Commissioner Gentiloni. Thank you so much.